So today we're going to be talking about how to use mums in containers. Mums, of course, are kind of the sign of fall. I always feel like, when football season arrives or when you just start to feel those temperatures start to kind of fall off just a little bit, the leaves start to change colors a little bit, and the mums start to bloom. And mums are absolutely gorgeous. They are such an easy plant to grow. It's one of my favorite plants to use in the fall season because they just have those fall colors. They naturally, have those yellows and maroons and those purples. Even that purple, you would think purple isn't a fall color, but it really is because it turns into that maroonish color. You got oranges, yellows, the list goes on and on. They are absolutely amazing and they're really, really easy to grow. So some fun facts about mums are, of course, their full name is chrysanthemums. Chrysanthemums are actually one of the most popular flowers used in all florist arrangements, even more so than roses across the world, that is. So there's a lot of different styles of mums and different shapes and different habits, and there's over 1,000 different varieties now that they've been cultivated. They were originally cultivated in China. They do naturally grow in China and in the northeast part of Europe, so really kind of a cool plant. And now that they've been cultivated and grown for these different varieties, and so that you can get the kind of nice bloom time and period and different types of shapes and sizes of blooms, they're so much fun to use. They love full sun, so they definitely can take full sun. They actually can take as little as 5 to 6 hours of sunlight, so that's really not too bad. It's a great porch plant. I really love them on porches. They actually grow indoors really, really well. This is actually a florist mum, as you can see here. So florist mums, we call them florist mums here because they've been greenhouse grown to specifically kind of be used indoors. Now you can use them outdoors, you can plant them in the ground. Typically what happens is when you plant them in the ground, they don't come back exactly the same. So you can see this one's gonna get more of an orangey tone in it, and then kind of go through that color arrangement. So really, really cool that you can get the florist mums too. But all mums are perennials in this area as well. So that's what I don't think a lot of people know. I think a lot of people treat mums as annuals, which is completely fine. If you take your mum at the end of the season and you throw it away, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to give you a couple tips and pointers on what you can do, but you should plant them. Almost all mums are perennials in this area. They all do very well. So in the Hampton Roads area, in our zone, really to about zone, I think it's 6, mums are hardy and perennial and they come back each year. So really easy to grow. You can plant them in the ground, they can come back year after year, and they're just a lot of fun. Now, what you can do also with mums as they get older is you can divide them. So let's say you plant one in the ground and it's gotten pretty big, and sometimes you might see the center kind of fall apart a little bit. That means it's time to probably go in and divide it. And a lot of times you'll see where the branches kind of have hit the ground. They've started maybe a new cluster, a new clump. You see it a lot with hydrangeas. Very similar kind of idea here with mums. And you can just go in and easily cut those plants up, dig up the root systems that's nearby. And usually that center root system is kind of faded off and it's not producing as well. But those newer, fresher roots on the outside have done very well. And you can divide your mums. So one mum can turn into 5 or 6 mums in 3 or 4 years. And they're just a lot of fun, and they're just, like I mentioned, just so easy. Let's see. I think I talked about pretty much all my little fun mum facts. Oh, well, here's another good one, because I don't think a lot of people know this. I think a lot of people think that mums are natural deterrents to insects, and they do have a little bit of that capability, but they're not great. I wouldn't say if you put a mum on your front porch, you're gonna have no mosquitoes. But what they do is they can extract the oil out of chrysanthemums, out of the leaves, and they are used in one of the most popular organic insecticides out there. So if you ever buy an organic insecticide and it's called pyrethrin, then that is actually from chrysanthemum oil. So it's a great organic insecticide. That's why I love chrysanthemums. In China, they use the dried flowers to make an herbal tea. There's just so many different uses for them. They're just a lot of fun, and they're easy to grow, and that's why we love mums. And of course, we love fall, right? Because the temperatures are starting to cool down, and they're just a lot of fun to use. So today, I'm gonna show you some great ways to use them in containers. Of course, inside, you can use these florist mums just in a pot to make a fall decoration, to make a little tablescape. But really, one of my favorite uses is just to slip them in containers by themselves. So you see this a lot. It's really easy. You see the front steps of somebody's house and they've got 3 different pots or a cluster or a group, and that's really what I've done here. And you can mix it up, and this is a crone that I put in here. So I love crones because they have that fall color. But what you can also do, and these are just slipped in, and that's why I love terracotta, because it's super easy, it's simple to use. But this is basically, 3 different shapes and styles of terracotta. So I've got this one, it's got a little bit of like a bell shape almost, a little bit of a vase shape, and I put my smallest 6-inch mum in there. Then I stepped up to a little bit of a bigger one. This is an 8-inch, and this is really that true bell shape. So you can kind of see that slightly kind of curved underside, and it has a slightly different color. And I put my 8-inch burgundy mum in there. And then I've got my nice big white mum. This is our 9-inch. This is a gorgeous size, and you can use a lot of different things. I mean, sometimes you'll get them in bushel baskets, sometimes you get them in hanging baskets. You can take the hanger off, but look at the size of that mum. I mean, you cannot beat that. It is massive, and you just pop this right into that bigger terracotta pot, and there you go. Super, super simple. I love this look. This is great. Once we start to get the pumpkins in, which are going to be very soon, I believe our pumpkins come in very soon, then you can start to arrange some pumpkins around it. You can take some of the harvest corn, corn stalks, different things. I love to add to my front porch throughout the fall season. And so usually I'll start with mums. As pansies become a little bit later into the season, I can start to get into pansies. And there's a lot of different things you can do. Like I mentioned, you can pop the croton in here. Or you could take something smaller out. Maybe you don't like the yellow mum. Then we could take the yellow mum out and we could pop in an ornamental pepper. So we can just pop something in like that. So there's a lot of great unique ways to kind of mix it up. I love using the odd numbers. So always use odd numbers as much as you possibly can. Odd numbers really work very, very well. That's why you see interior designers use odd numbers all the time. And there's always that kind of rule of a third too. So typically what we mean by the rule, the rule of the thirds is that 1, use odd numbers, but 2, even when you're looking at your container, it's kind of a tricky kind of subject to kind of understand. But when you're planting a container, you typically want to measure, I always measure the pot size. And then I try and either double that on the top, so 2/3 are on the top, 1/3 of container, or 2/3 a container and 1/3 on the top. So let's say you got 12-inch container, 12-inch height container. Then you could go 24 inches on the top. So you would want your plant to get somewhere around 2 feet, and you're going to see that when I do my container here in a minute. But if you want to have a taller container, typically you don't need to go as tall on the top. So let's say your container is 24 inches tall. Your plant should only get about 12 inches tall. Now, those are just some general rules. You can do what makes you happy. That's why I love gardening, because who cares? It's your yard, it's your container. You do what makes you happy, and keep it fun and keep it light. But try some of these different techniques, because I think you'll really enjoy them. And of course, this is one of the simplest, easiest ways, is just slipping them. You can use terracotta pots, you can use plastic pots, you can use ceramic pots. I'm going to plant a ceramic pot up here in a second, but I absolutely love terracotta. It just has that fall look and that fall feel and that everyday feel. I just love terracotta. It's got that gardening touch to it. So it's just one of my favorite planters to use is terracotta. So let's see, I think I kind of didn't scroll down. So let's see, Joan said, love your webinars. Thank you very much from Northern Maryland. And Sharon says, is it cool enough right now to put mums outdoors? Temps still in the mid-80s. So Sharon, yes. So definitely fine to put your mums outside. If you feel like it's too hot, maybe during a really hot day, if we get up into the 90s again, you might bring them up into a shady area. You might bring them into the garage for the day. But really, they really are blooming more on the amount of daylight. So it's really not heat or temperature that's going to hurt the bloom cycle. Sometimes they'll bloom a little bit faster. Yes, when blooms open up and it's hotter outside, they might not last as long. But most mums should last 4 to 6 weeks when they're blooming. So that's kind of the bloom time, 4 to 6, maybe 8 weeks if you do a little bit of deadheading. But great question, Sharon. They definitely love full sun, but they're really blooming on the length of the day. So as the day gets shorter, that's when they start to kind of say, okay, this is time to kind of bloom. And why do plants bloom? To reproduce. And so they're saying, okay, it's about to go fall. I'm about to go into dormancy in the future, in 2.5 months. And so I'm going to go ahead and try and reproduce real quick. Now, none of your mums are going to multiply by really reproducing. That's natural. That's in their native setting. But that is kind of what they're kind of set up and engineered to kind of do. That's what their lineage has always done, is said, okay, the days are getting shorter. Now it's time to bloom. So great question. I'd say go ahead and put them out there. And let's just hope here in the Hampton Roads area, Sharon, that at least the temperatures come down, or really wherever you're watching from. I mean, the temperatures have been high and it's been dry, but it's fall and it's time to enjoy it. And that's why I love mums in containers, is because maybe we don't want to plant in the ground right now. And you can plant these mums later. So it's a great thing to always kind of address your containers. Typically your summer annuals are starting to look a little sad now. Your petunias maybe don't look as good, or your begonias or whatever you've planted, or maybe you're just tired of it. That's usually how I am, is I love my plants, but at the same time I'm always ready to change. I'm always ready to try something new. And so great simple way, 3 different heights of terracotta pot, 3 different sizes of mums. Super, super simple. Now you can go and just say, I want to be symmetrical and I want 2 big mums on each side of my door. That's completely fine. Completely up to you. But I love adding a little bit of height and play with height. Do I need to water them every day when the days are cooler? So Sharon, great question. Watering requirements on mums are really kind of tricky. I always use my finger as the test. You can use weight as well. So if you've got it just slipped into a pot, you can just kind of weigh it to see if it's got that weight to it. But really just use the best tool that you got is your finger, and you want to keep them evenly moist. So on a cooler day, Sharon, you should be really probably watering maybe 2 or 3 times a week, especially if they're not in full sun. And I'm talking when the temperatures are in the 60s to 70s. Now when we're in the 80s, probably going to have to water every day, at least just a little bit, just to keep it evenly moist. We don't want to let them get too dry. When you start to see the leaves sag a little bit, it's okay. But when if you got home from work and all of a sudden things just completely drooping, that can actually really, really harm the plant. Start to yellow leaves and the blooms will start to fade. Plants will produce blooms because they can reproduce them because they're healthy. But if they know that they might not survive, they're going to start dropping some of their functions, which means, hey, I'll drop some of my leaves, I'll start to yellow a little bit, maybe I won't bloom as profusely because I'm trying to survive. And so that's why I want to keep them evenly moist. That's the best thing. Don't overwater, don't underwater, try and keep it right in that even moist. Of course, what plant wouldn't like that? But great question, I didn't talk about watering. All right, so really love this design, super, super simple, but now let's build a container. And if I've got time, maybe I'll build a second one as well. All right, so what I'm going to use for this one is a ceramic container. I've got this really nice white container here that I've already kind of filled up with some really nice potting soil. So what do you need to get started? You're going to need a pot, you're going to need a container. Now this is a combination that I'm going to do. So you're going to need a pot, a really good potting soil. This is our McDonald organic potting soil. I'll show you the bag here in a minute. I'm going to use more of it, obviously, to fill in. But this is our McDonald organic potting soil. This is one of my favorite ones to use. It's a really good one because it's nice and rich and dark, and you can just see how nice that looks. So it's got a really, really nice, rich, dark texture to it. It's got a little bit of chunks in it, which is good, keeps it aerated, perlite, and then it's also got peat moss in it as well. So it's just a great potting soil to use for your everyday needs for outdoor planting for sure. So we've got our container, we've got our potting soil. I always recommend using Biotone whenever I do these planters. I always recommend using a Biotone starter. This has mycorrhizae and beneficial bacteria. You don't have to use this, but you could use something like our green leaf plant food. It's good to go ahead and put something in there. All potting soils, most, have a little bit of a light fertilizer, a little bit of a starter fertilizer. So if you don't use anything, you'll still be successful, and you can always add it later, so it's okay. But if you can put something in and get it right to the root system, you're going to absolutely love the results that it's going to give you. And Biotone is a great one because it's completely organic, it's nice and light, and it's got all those beneficial bacteria, mycorrhizae, that live with the plant and help and form a symbiotic relationship. Take what the plant doesn't need, give back what the plant does need. So it's a great, great thing. And Espoma has figured it out in their Biotone starter fertilizer. It's a great one. So we'll use that. And then, of course, you need plants. So whenever I go to walk around the garden center and kind of figure out what plants I want to use, of course I want to use mums. That's what I'm talking about today. And I knew that, so of course I started with mums and I said, that's going to be kind of my starting point. But then I really go back to like my basic kind of core technique or recipe, which is our spiller, thriller, and filler. Spiller, thriller, and filler is a great way to kind of get used to planting containers. It doesn't always have to kind of control you, but it really is a great tool to use because the thriller is going to be something upright, like maybe a grass, something that's going to kind of fill up the top portion and be the bigger plant in the container typically. Now, just because it's the thriller doesn't mean it has to be the show stealer, but your filler in this case is going to be your mum because it's going to fill in this middle area. So we've got our thriller that's going to add height, our filler that's going to fill in the space here, and then of course a spiller that's going to go over the side. And if you kind of stick to that and try that a couple times, I think you're going to love your plant combinations a little bit better. However, you don't always have to do it. And not always a spiller does it have to be a succulent like I might use today. So I've got this succulent here. Of course, you can see the spill habit to it. I absolutely love it. It's amazing. It looks great. I probably will use it. But you can also take something like, this ornamental kale. And if you plant it to the side a little bit, then you get that kind of spilling effect still. So it doesn't always have to be so straight, like it doesn't have to be an ivy, it doesn't have to be a vinca, it doesn't have to be a sedum, it doesn't have to be sweet potato vine. It can be lots of different things. It's more about changing texture and giving you that full effect. Remember that rule of thirds? So I want to get some height on this container. I want to get it up there. And so I'm going to need something that has some height. I'm going to need some filler, and then I'm going to need a little bit of spiller just to help kind of cover up some of that edge work, and also just because I want to see a lot of different things happen in my containers. So what I'm going to start with is what I went around and looked for was something for a little bit of height. So I found this grass. I love grasses. Grasses, of course, in the fall are amazing. This is when they put all of their blooms out as well. They're called plumes. And this is called a dwarf fountain grass. This is a Hamlin dwarf fountain grass. So I'll hold up the tag there so you can see it. Really, really nice one. Great show putting on right now with all these plumes. And of course, ornamental grasses will go brown in the winter, but that's okay with me. I actually like a brown grass. I mean, that looks kind of fall. I think it looks great in the winter, but these will stay green for a while. I mean, all the way until we have a hard frost, which could be, around Thanksgiving, around the mid-November time frame. So I'm going to have a long time with this grass, which I really, really like because, I mentioned mums last 4, maybe 6, maybe 8 weeks if we're lucky. So at some point, I'm probably going to want to change out my mum. And what works better with grasses are pansies. Pansies look great with them. So as we get into the cooler weather, when pansies really like to grow, then we can take out our mum and we can plant pansies. But for today, I'm going to use this grass as my thriller. So we're just going to tap the sides a little bit. And I'm just going to lightly and gently try and get this guy out of here. I got my tag is kind of getting him in the way here. So let's see if I can pop that off. I probably should have taken that off first. There we go. Okay, remember I've got my potting soil in here. I always like to get my first plant in and then add my biotone. So that's what I'm going to do next. Probably in a container this size, right around a cup would be plenty. So I'm going to kind of roughly judge that just with my eyes and just make sure I get this right down in that potting soil layer and it gets right to the root system of these plants that I'm planting. So it's going to work out perfect. Now, a lot of us always want to put this plant right in the center, right? I always urge you to try different things. And I love to put containers. I mean, typically almost all my containers aren't really seen all the way around. Maybe if I put one on the edge of the steps where I might see the back from my side, but really, why are we planting our containers is to make our neighbors envious, right? And to really add a show and add some curb appeal. Typically, now if you're using it for a centerpiece on a table, like a dining table, of course, plant it in the center, plant it evenly, or mix it up. It doesn't have to be perfectly even. But for this, I'm going to put it in the back because it'll help me kind of show everything in the front, which is what I'm going to do because this is going to go somewhere where I'm not going to need to see the back a whole lot. So I'm going to take this, I'm just going to dig a little bit of a deeper hole because I want this to really be able to have a 1-inch kind of depth of a lip here. And what that'll do is make watering easy. Whenever you plant a combination planter, don't put your soil right up to the top level. It's going to make watering a nightmare. Trust me, you always want a little bit of water holding capacity or a little bit of a reservoir in there. All right, so now we've planted that. So we're going to turn that to the side so you can kind of see it a little bit and get me out of behind the plant. All right, so now I'm just going to take some soil and fill up around the edges here, kind of fill in those cracks. I love to do that with my first plant, get some of that soil packed into the cracks here so that I don't have to kind of really kind of tuck a bunch of soil in at the end. Then what I did was I picked out my mum. So this is the mum I went with. This really pretty orange. I don't know if you can quite see it, but it's really got a yellow but kind of orange color to it. So of course, using a straight yellow mum is really easy, and I might use that if I've got time to do another one. But this is a great one. This one works really, really well with kind of my contrast colors. So instead of doing like a light container, like I could have paired a lot of different things here. I could have made a purple one. I've made those in the past. But I really wanted to go contrast because contrast in the fall is great. And I really want to use some of those oranges and maroons and purples in this container. So we've got our mum here. I'm going to need to bring the soil level up just a little bit. And I do like to rough up the sides of my root balls just a little bit, just so that that root system knows that it's in a different place. Now I'm going to put this directly in front of the grass. Maybe slightly off center, okay? Always trying to keep myself a little bit off and kind of doing something slightly different. And I'm going to start to kind of plan and prepare. Now I knew that I wanted this to be my thriller. I knew that my mum was going to be my filler. It's going to be kind of my showpiece, and I want that kind of front and center. And then I do want to use some spillers. I really do like this succulent. This is a Sedum Angelina. It's a great one. This will actually turn bright red as we get colder. It needs to get a little bit colder, but this is a stone crop Sedum Angelina. So I definitely want to use that, and it works well with this. I really love these kales and ornamental cabbages. They are so awesome, and they just add that fall feel to it. This is a great one. So I'm going to show you a bunch of plants here, and then I'm going to make some decisions. This is actually a sedge. This is a carex, sorry. This is Everillo carex. And this is a great spiller as well. That chartreuse color is great. This is actually an evergreen, so it's going to look good all the way through the winter. So that's a great option. I love that one. I absolutely love heucheras. Heucheras are my all-time favorite. Now this is a little bit of a bigger pot. I don't know if I'll be able to fit it in there, but I love that look, that bright burgundy. Looks really, really good. So we've got that option. I probably won't use this Plectranthus, but this Plectranthus is absolutely stunning. I just love that dark leaf with those purple to lilac blooms. So this would look great in there. I mean, it really would look pretty good. So really lots and lots of cool plants. Even Celosia is really popular. Celosia is great. It'll bloom. Snapdragons, you know, I really kind of stay away from snaps and pansies until I know that it's going to be cooler. So I usually try and wait a little bit more, like wait till October. But mums are really September. Mums are great in September. So these are great options. So Tiffany said, can someone type the name of some of these spillers? So yeah, we can type them. It's Sedum Angelina or Stone Crop Angelina, Sedum Angelina. And then this is the Carex Everillo. And I think that was it kind of for my true spillers. I mean, I love these kales, these ornamental kales. I think you can turn on the side and they make great little spillers. So, all right, what I'm gonna do is, I think I definitely wanna use, I'm gonna try and pack it in here a little bit. I really wanna use this heuchera. I love heucheras. And they just speak fall to me. I just absolutely love them. So this is gonna be the one that I'm gonna use. And basically we're just gonna take this out, lightly loosen up the root ball a little bit. And then I'm gonna just get him right in here. And I really want him kind of centered in the back. It's a little bit of another kind of filler. So it's not quite of a spiller. It's more in the filling world here. And that gives me just enough space here in the front to do something a little bit different there. And then another little space back here. So I'm going to put that in there. And then I'm going to use, so as you can see, as I spin it around, I've got this space here. And since I've got burgundy here, I can go kind of back to a darker color. So I could go with this kale. Or this one. I got both of these. So I really like that blue color. It works great. It's kind of something different. Look at that. I mean, that's just perfect. Or this guy. So I think I like the blue one. So I'm going to put the blue one in. Now, ornamental kales and cabbages, you can actually plant pretty low in the ground. So you can actually plant this all the way up to here. So sometimes they can get a little tree-like looking. So sometimes it's good to just go ahead and plant them a little low. So I'm going to get this nice and in there so that I can plant it low. And I'm going to put it pretty close to this grass. And this thing's going to get big. I mean, this is going to fill up over here. And as the temperatures get colder, it's actually going to get a brighter color on the inside. So this is going to turn almost this kind of neon pink on the inside. It's going to be absolutely stunning. And then that allows me to actually push my mum just over just a little bit more. So now you can see here, the heuchera. I've got a nice space right here. And then I've got my cabbage or my ornamental kale there. I always called them cabbages. I know they're actually technically an ornamental kale. And then I am going to use the sedum. Now this is Sedum Angelina, as I mentioned earlier. It's a little fragile, so be careful with it. There's a lot of different ones out there, lemon drop, gumdrop. There's a lot of different types, but this is an evergreen, So I always like to use, if I can, some evergreens in there because as I mentioned, my mom is going to go in about 8 weeks. So it's going to give me a good amount of time. I'm going to have it for 2 months. I can take my mom out. I can pop a pumpkin in there if I wanted to, or I can plant pansies, which is what I will probably do. So to have some components in here that I'm not going to have to worry about changing out for a long time is a great option. So then I'm just going to pop this in there and let it hang over the side as a true spiller will. And as you can see, even as careful as I was with it, still lost a couple pieces. I could take those and just pop those in some soil down there and they'll root right in. They're very easy to root. So now you can see how that looks with that. So here we go. We've got our container. I don't think I'd put anything else in there. I mean, I grabbed this pepper because I was thinking maybe this could be kind of a cool spiller because it would fill over the side, but maybe I'll use this in a different container. So we'll see. But this turned out really, really well, and it's actually got a pretty good 360. Now, what you could consider doing, I haven't completely planted this yet, and I like to do that. I like to kind of place everything, is you could take out your ornamental cabbage, and we could shift our mum just back enough. Let's see if I can do this. And then we could pop this in here. I don't think I'm going to like it as much because I really was playing, like I said, with this contrast. But that's not bad either. But I think I like it back the way it was. So we're going to go put it back. And that's why it's good. Whenever I'm in the garden center, I always take these containers and I place them on top of my cart and I kind of place them around and see if I like the arrangement. And that's, I think, how I originally had designed this one, is to have a cabbage over here. And I know it looks a little small back there, kind of almost hidden, but this thing is going to get big. It's going to fill out. And by the time this really fills out and gets big, the mum might be kind of being, towards the end of its blooming period. So I might take it out, go plant it, and then I can put some pansies or a pumpkin in there, and that big cabbage is going to be, that big ornamental kale is going to be back there, really putting on a show at that point. So there we go. There's how I do a fall container. Really, really simple. Let's see if we can do one more real quick, and then I can answer any kind of questions out there. Do you have a trumpet conifer? Deborah, I don't know. I have to look that one up. I'll have to get back to you on that one. I'm pretty sure we don't have that one, but I'm not sure I know what that is. So great question. I love to kind of take my plants as I'm done and kind of get them all spaced out, make sure that they're kind of intermixing with each other. And look at that. So that's what I've got to do here is all I've got to do at the end here is basically fill in my little pockets of soil. I'm not going to do that right now, so that I can plant up another container for you. But this one turned out great. I really like it. So I'm going to shift some stuff around here because I think I'm going to use that terracotta pot there. And while I do that, I'm going to tell you that we also have some great pre-made combos here. So, if you don't feel like creating one, you can always come in and just pick up a pre-made container ready to go. These are awesome, easy to use, and they absolutely look amazing this year. So I think I'm going to use this pot here. And that way I can move this over. So there we go. Get that kind of sitting there for us to see. And then we'll plant up another container here. Now, another option that I wanted to show you, and this is kind of fun, it's kind of whimsical, which I love to do, is these pumpkin planters. So these are pumpkin planters. These are really cool. So they come in 2 different sizes. You can put a 6-inch mum in the little guy. So what's really cool about these pumpkin planters is you just drop in a mum. It looks great. It's got the pumpkin kind of facade on this side, and then it's got the jack-o'-lantern side on this side. So you can spin it around if you want a fall look. And then, of course, you can put it this way if you want to kind of dress up your front porch for Halloween. So we'll stick that over here so we can keep that kind of our eye on that. And then, of course, we got the bigger one, too. So if you want to put a bigger mum, like an 8-inch or a 9-inch mum in it, then you can do that as well. So I'll pull this one up here and show you how you can do that. Just drop this in. Bam, done. Pumpkin's got a little head of hair, and it's a mum. So you got the pumpkin, the jack-o'-lantern, or you've got the pumpkin facade. So these are great containers, easy to use. So like I said, plastic, the fall look like these. You can use so many different things that you can kind of think of and use throughout the season. All right, let's see here. Now we've got a little bit of time. What size is your largest terracotta pot you just showed us? So this one that I'm going to use here is, I believe, it 12-inch, 14. So 14.25 inch. So kind of standard sizes. You're going to get, 8 inch, 10 inch, 12 inch, 14 inch, 16. I think we have one that's almost 24 inches. And really what they're measuring there is the width, not so much the height. So the height on this is probably, probably about 12 inches, maybe a little bit more. But you can definitely get lots bigger. We have bigger ones than this too. All right. So I think what I'm going to do here is, of course, fill up my pot with soil. So we're going to use our natural organic potting soil again and get this up to the level. Now, as I mentioned, I absolutely love crotons. So I'm going to use this croton in this terracotta pot. This is going to look great. It's a very, very simple combination here. So this is kind of going back to the rule of threes. This is going to be an awesome, awesome option. The cost on the pumpkin planter, the big one, let's see if it's tagged. The big one is $16.99, and the smaller one is $9.99. So great little planter. It's kind of like it's not like plastic. It's kind of like almost like a resin. So they're really, really nice, and they last a long time. They're really cool. But I'm going to use this croton here as my thriller. What I love about crotons is they work for the tropical periods. So they work during the tropical times of the year because they have those bright colors, but they also work great for fall. Tropical colors and fall colors work really, really well together. Let's see. Whenever I look at something like this, most crotons are going to have usually kind of like 3 stems on the inside. So I kind of want to make sure I position it right so that it's giving me my coverage, but it's also giving me some space here. So as you can see there, that works out perfect. All right, now we're going to do our biotone. Perfect. Spread that around, put my soil back in the area that I need it, and there we go. All right, so we've got our croton. It's kind of big. Let's see if I can push this off to the side a little bit so we can see what's going on. All right, so here we go. We've got our croton, and then, of course, we want to use mums. Now, I could use like that florist mum, which would look really pretty because it's got some multiple colors in there. That would work well. But I think I'm going to go straight yellow. I'm going to use this yellow mum. It's a little bit smaller. I need a little bit of a smaller size. I could go big. I love this maroon color with it. It would look great. But it's a little bit of a bigger pot, so I think I'm going to stick with the slightly smaller size container here and really work on pulling these yellow portions of these leaves out. So we're going to make sure we've got space there. Always kind of gently kind of cradle the top of your plant. Try not to grab your mums from the top. Mums are fairly brittle, so I like to put my hand underneath, kind of over top of the soil like this, and then just take the pot and pull the pot off. And then I'm just holding the root ball rather than the top of the plant. There we go. All right, so that looks great together. Really pulls out that color. Now what we could do is we could use that pepper this time if we wanted to. I think I kind of like the pepper in there, but I feel like we need a little bit of a break on the color, so I think I'm going to use that really nice cabbage in there. So there we go. That's how simple it would be. So let's take our, let me make sure, I thought I had one. Oh, I have one other plant. I don't think I'm going to use it though, but I have to show it to you. It's another type of celosia. This is called twisted strawberry. Really cool. You know, it's really more of a pink than it is a maroon, so I don't think it's going to quite work for what I'm doing. But this would look great if you're trying to make like a fun kind of pink fall look. There's some mums that have like little pink tones to it. This is just really, really cool. Some people call them coxcombs. This is a celosia, and this one's called twisted strawberry. So really, really cool plant. I just had to grab that. I really love this Carex too. Maybe I'll use that. Let's see what it looks like. All right, I think I'm going to change my pepper. I'm going to take my pepper out because I really love this Carex and I want to use it. So we're going to take the Carex, and because I want contrast, I'm going to put this over further, a little bit further, and we'll use our last ornamental kale right there. So this is Carex Everillo. Going to go right back here. And then, like I said, just kind of take your plant and feel free to kind of kind of manipulate it a little bit so that it's facing kind of outward, and that'll really help it spill down. And then we'll use our last ornamental kale here. Same thing, plant it a little low. I could take these two little leaves off here. I'm not going to do that quite yet because I really like the fact that they're going to kind of be used to kind of help kind of create a little bit of a trailing effect there. And then we'll just take our grass here, our Carex, and make sure that it's kind of overhanging everything and kind of popping in and out of everywhere. And that's what's great about like things that are vining like ivy and stuff like that, is because you can kind of shape them and move them around. All right, so there we go. So now that's kind of my container right there with the croton. I love crotons because they give you that color. Like I mentioned, the mums aren't going to last forever, but they're going to give you a show that you're never going to get from anything else. I mean, just completely full of color. They're easy, they're inexpensive, and they're perennials. So let me give you a couple tips and tricks here. If you're going to do a mum just by itself, so let me get this off and over here to the side. So if you're going to do a mum by itself, just in a container, so like I have that terracotta pot right here. And then we have our maroon mum here. So if you're going to do just something like this, which I absolutely love, super, super simple, decorate with some pumpkins around it, then once the mum fades, there's two things you can do. Of course, number one, plant it. Go and take it, use it in the yard, put it in an area that gets at least 5 to 6 hours of sunlight, and you'll absolutely love it. The way to kind of maintain them in the future, this is a good thing to kind of take a note on, is if you want to grow a good garden mum in the ground, in the landscape, you do need to do some pinching or some slight pruning. And typically that's from about mid-spring to midsummer. About every 3 to 4 weeks, just go out and just lightly kind of clip it back a little bit, and that will allow the plant to bush out and get a little bit bigger, and it keeps it more sturdy and more compact. If you let a mum naturally grow by itself, it tends to get a little leggy. When they bloom, they tend to fall apart. Now that can happen with age as well, but to keep them nice and tight and compact, it's good to get maybe 2 or maybe 3 prunes on it if you can. And what that means is just a light tipping, taking no more than an inch off, 2 to 3 times from mid-spring to midsummer. Midsummer, cut it out, usually 4th of July. Don't prune it anymore, just do a little light tipping, and then by the fall, it'll be nice and bushy and full like this and hold those blooms. Now, the other option is to not worry about it. And I've had some of the mums come back from this, and it's going to sound kind of drastic, but instead of throwing it away, then what's really cool about a mum is it's got a great root system. So let's just take this out. I'll show you the root system here real quick. So you can see just how nice and tight and compact that is. So you can't quite see the roots. It's a very kind of thin root structure, but it's nice and tight in here. And so at Christmas, I love to use fresh greens. And I'm always looking for something to kind of shove the fresh greens into. You can go buy Oasis blocks, you can pack potting soil into a pot. They all work, but nothing's better than a mum root ball, trust me. So if you're gonna throw your mum away, just take the top and cut it off, throw that away, and then save your root ball because it's gonna be a great place to push all your stuffed greens in, like conifers, so your pine and all of those different things. I'll make some for the webinar this Christmas. They're absolutely one of my favorite things to do because they're so simple. It's fail-proof. You cannot mess it up. You just stuff a bunch of fresh greens in there and they last all Christmas and they create a gorgeous arrangement for your front porch or even indoor decorating. So great another use of that mum container. So hope you all enjoy this. I think I saw a couple questions up there. I saw an unfortunate comment of mum killer, so hopefully we can make you not a mum killer. Let's see. All right, we got the pumpkin planter. Thank you. So Tiffany said, thank you. I've been a mum killer quickly in the past. I'm trying to reform. So yeah, so Tiffany, I think you were probably referring to probably either the sunlight or the watering. Watering evenly moist. When it's hot outside, probably every single day you're watering, but once we start to cool down, you can start to probably cut that to every other day. And your best tool that you got is right here on your fingers, so definitely try that. And just check the moisture level. If it feels slightly dry, give it a little bit of water. Just keep giving it a little bit of water and that'll help kind of keep it evenly moist. Emily says, I have a really tall planter. Is there something I can use to fill in the excess space underneath besides soil? Yes, you can. So Emily, that's a great question. I always recommend just using potting soil personally, but people have used packing peanuts. I love if you've got broken terracotta pots or broken containers like that, put that down in there. Rock is expensive. Rock's going to make it heavy. However, if it's a tall planter and you're worried about it falling over, now it might be tall and heavy, which is great. But what you can do is you can put bricks down in the bottom. You could use anything. They actually make a product called an upsy-daisy. I don't know if it's called upsy-daisy, but it's basically like a plastic saucer that has holes in it, and you put it down in the pot. The problem there is it's very difficult to find the right size that fits perfectly where you want it to. But you definitely are going to want a terracotta pot broken up, or rock, or something in there. Packing peanuts work okay. I tend to keep it organic and keep it safe, and so I just say fill it with potting soil. It's almost probably going to be about the same price. If anything, it might be slightly cheaper to just use potting soil. And that potting soil is going to be fine. It's going to be good. It's going to be aerated. It's going to be perfectly fine to let the water percolate through over time. So Michelle said after they bloom, trim it down. Yes. So Michelle, a couple different things you can do. As they start to fade, you can actually typically go in and pick some of the dead heads off, and you can get more blooms coming out after that. Or what I usually do is if the mum's kind of done and I'm kind of done, I want to save the root ball, I'm not going to plant it in my yard, then I just cut it off down at the base. Like literally, I'm going to go in at the bottom and just trim it right off at the top, like just basically cutting it down to the ground. Because if I'm going to use it for stuffed greens, for all my fresh greens, then I don't really need the top. If I want to save the plant, if I want to grow it naturally, let it naturally go dormant. If you're going to throw it away, save the root ball because I think you'll love it for those fresh greens at the Christmas time. But if you're going to plant it, then wait for it to go dormant naturally. That's going to take a hard frost. Once we get a hard frost, then it's going to go kind of black and brown and nasty looking. And then that's when you want to cut off the top, and then you save the root ball and plant it, and it'll come back year after year. Let's see. Sharon said, do you buy a 10-inch plant for a 12-inch pot? So yes, great question. And no, I mean, yes and no, you can. So this guy right here is a, let's see, this is a 10-inch, 10 by 8. So 10 by 8, that's going to be 10 inches across, 8 inches tall. And so that gives me a 10-inch width for this 8-inch planter. So yeah, about 2 inches difference gives me about an inch around the edge. But basically what I'm doing is fitting it. So, and you can actually change that or manipulate that how you need it to be. So what basically I'm saying there is, let's say this pot was much bigger, and I don't think I have one that's much, much bigger. But what I'll do a lot of times, and I actually was doing it with that one before I planted it, is I'll use another terracotta pot, a brick, anything that can act as a riser. And I can put it down at the bottom, and then I can pop my pot right on top of it without having to plant it. And that gives you a little bit more height if you want it. Now, if you can see here, that's going to sit just a little too high, but I could always lean it a little forward so that you can't quite see if you're using a front porch. But you can use different types of risers inside to kind of correct that issue. But yeah, typically you're right, Sharon. Right around a 2-inch difference. So a 10-inch pot for an 8-inch mum, or a 12-inch pot for a 10-inch mum. Kind of that kind of rough rule, but basically making sure it fits. And don't worry about the depth so much. If it's a deeper pot and you really want the planter in there, so like I love to just take ceramic pots and drop something like this in there as a quick fix. Maybe I got a party coming up, I got company coming over, I want to just fix up my containers real quick. So I'll take out some of my old plants, leave maybe some of the potting soil in there, and just drop a planter in there. And that's one option to create a riser, is potting soil. Another one is just another pot or a couple bricks, whatever you might want to use to kind of create that riser. So hopefully that helps everybody. I hope you all enjoyed this live webinar. Sorry for our technical difficulties at the beginning, but we got it straightened up, and I think you'll really enjoy making some fun containers with mums. They're a lot of fun, they're very easy to do, and they create a lot of excitement on your front porch or your back deck or wherever you're enjoying them. They're just a lot of fun, and they're very easy. And then think about all the options that you can do as the season progresses. It's a lot of fun. Add some pumpkins to it, add some pansies to it later, corn stalks. The fall time is a great time to decorate. It's an easy one too. It's one of my favorite seasons because it's easy. So thank you all for joining me. I hope you all have a great day.